back to another episode of Sonoma Brain Trust. We've got a double hitter today, and we're really looking forward to having Matt Everson on with us, who's a specialist in insurance. One of the things that makes Matt really a great resource is he's part of the CFP Club, which I'm a member of, and so that's a certified financial planner, so he's got a lot of financial background. But one of the things that's really pertinent to what's going on in California right now is this. He's got some insight into how to work with insurance companies and how to deal with insurance policies if you're a fire victim. I've got with me Mary Piasta, our local attorney with Haeuser, Valluzzo, Piasta. Did I get him in the right order? Maybe, sort of, not really.
Nice, Daren. So, it's all
right,
good.
Excellent. So Mary's joining us from beautiful Washington, where they're having a wind event. You can tell with the wind in the background, and as we are through much of the West, having this heat, wind, all kinds of weird weather behavior. So she cuts in and out. Please forgive her. We're just dealing with that one. And Chelsie Runnings, who's literally got a fire in her backyard today. So if she has to leave, we will absolutely forgive her. And without further ado, we'll jump on in with Matthew. And as you all know, these conversations are free-flowing. So, Matt, let me put myself in the shoes of a fire victim for a minute, right? So I just found out my house burned down. What do I do now?
Okay, good question. Well, the first thing you want to do is just make sure you're safe. If people are listening to this and they're actually being evacuated right now, you're going to have typically 2 to 3 years to settle your claim. So there's no, if it's a declared emergency, like federal or state declared emergency, you're going to have 3 years, up to 3 years to finalize things. So there's no real rush to call your insurance agents or get anything going in that regard. I think just keep stock of what you've got, your family, what you need to do to be safe. That's number one. Number two, after that is, if you can, while you're evacuating, grab your insurance policy. A lot of people have those online now, but a lot of people still have the old paper. And what's interesting is you would lose these things if the home burned down in a fire, and the insurance companies, our company caught them multiple times sending out half of the policy. The policies typically in insurance are derived as a master policy, and then state by state they're approved, and each state adds tiny addendums. California adds tons of addendums, one of which is the right to replace your home. And when you ask for your policy and you don't get a full, what they call certified copy, so we always ask you to request a certified copy in writing from the insurance company. That gives you, as the lawyer on the call would say, that's the rule book. The policy is how this thing's going to be dictated. And so if you don't have all of the pages, you're in the bad leverage spot. So first things first is let's get the policy. And then you would hope your insurance company is going to help to deal with you. So the process is they're going to send out an agent or an adjuster to look at the property damage. And you want to, what we're suggesting now after doing this for 3 straight years is hire a contractor first before the insurance company gets there. The insurance company brings their person out, who's usually from not from California, has no concept of what things cost here. And they give an estimate of what they think it's going to cost to rebuild the home. And I would say 6 times out of 10, if not more, that estimate is 20 to 30 to 40% low. So if you've got a $700,000 rebuild, you're seeing a report from your insurance company that says it's only going to cost $450,000. And now you've got a problem. And that's where worry, that's where anxiety happens. People don't know if they're going to have enough money, if the insurance company is going to pay them. And that's all by design. The insurance companies that do this, and State Farm is probably, I don't know if I can say that on this call, but State Farm is probably the worst. But there are other companies that do this as well, and it's designed sort of confusion. The adjusters.
The lawyer's skin just curled with that comment.
Well, I've got a lot of evidence, so it's not slander. State Farm's tried to come after me for saying things negative, but anyways, the point is that they're going to send somebody out to give what's called a scope of loss. Scope of loss is this estimate of what it costs to rebuild. That out of the gate from some insurance companies is going to be wrong, and they put you in a position of trying to argue that. Most of you folks that have clients that are experiencing this aren't going to know how to rebuild a home. And so they're not going to know how to argue that you use 2x6s, not 2x4s. that you have to have an on-demand water heater, not a 50-gallon gas tank. That you need to have wildland-urban interface windows, not regular windows anymore. There's so many things. Our reports end up being about 90 pages of just line items of materials. So to ask an individual homeowner to go through these estimates that are given to them by the insurance company and point out how they're wrong, you can see where this begins to become problematic for a homeowner.
And Matt, you have a builder on your staff too, right? So when you do this, you have someone in the industry locally who's able to give the appropriate things.
Exactly.
So it's a completely different way of looking at it, right?
Exactly. And I think I told you, Mary, the other day on the phone, is that this is a language thing. You all are in professions where you know the language and your clientele maybe doesn't know it as well. And so you can utilize that language to help people and speak to them in terms that they understand, or you can confuse them if you want and take advantage of them. By my speaking the language of insurance, we're able to help people understand how these reports are going to work. And then with my partner being a contractor, we can prove to these insurance companies that our estimates are accurate, because their estimates are done by people that aren't builders.
So Matt,
they have biased adjusters.
Matt, it sounds like you work as an advocate for fire victims rather than just like an insurance adjuster where, like, I remember my car got broken into and I took it to the place that the Geico told me to take it, and it was a broken window, and they were like, we're going to salvage it. And it was just a broken window, but I had nobody to really like speak on my behalf to really guide me and tell me like, hey, no, this is like absurd. We're not going to salvage your car over a broken window. So to me, it sounds like you're working more as an advocate for the fire victims, whereas like, and we've talked about fiduciaries before, that's not necessarily what like your insurance company does.
So just to make things all very, very clear, we do estimates as a contractor. We cannot give insurance advice, okay, by law. Public adjusters is a term for people that do that are licensed, and we are not a public adjuster. However, once our estimate is done, I can give freely all the education I want. And so what I do is I educate people on the side of for free. Okay, so we have them pay for our estimates. So I just, as a technicality, I don't want it to appear that we're giving insurance advice at all. What we typically will do is just interpret. And again, going back to language, if someone shows me an email from their insurance adjuster and they don't know what that means, and I know what that means, I can tell her, I know what that means. If I were you, I might do this. And that's how we handle skipping around sort of the what they call public adjuster. Public adjusters, Daren will probably get a kick out of this one, are basically like annuity salespeople. Okay, they are paid a big fat commission to drive an agenda, and that agenda for them is to get 10% of your insurance payout. 9 out of 10 of them that I've bumped into in the last 3 years have no interest in actually educating their client or getting what's, talk about fiduciary, what's best for the client. They're interested in inflating the estimate, arguing with the insurance company until they get full max on the coverage, and then they get 10, 20, 30% of that, depending on their contracts. And that's why I started doing this. To me, that's egregious. If you have $1 million insurance policy, there's not $100,000 of work for me to do here. And so if you have $1 million insurance policy, it's likely your home's going to cost $1.2 to $1.3 million to rebuild. You're going to need all of that, as much as that as you can, to rebuild. So to have these adjusters come along and pretend like they're giving you something that's like rocket science and charging these enormous prices for it, well, I saw it as damaging to our community in Santa Rosa. And now I see it as damaging to the entire darn state. And so, whereas I just wanted to do this for Santa Rosa and be done with it, I don't know. It looks like our state's going to continue to burn for a while. And so the insurance companies have not adjusted their take and their approach to doing this. So we feel like it's fine for us to do accurate estimates. And then Chelsie, to answer your question, yes, when they tell you, why are we salvaging this car? You would turn to me and say, why would we want to do that? Oh, I wouldn't do that if I were you. And so I'm hand holding. I'm trying to keep it very separate. Bill stays at an arm's length from me. Bill's the contractor. He never sees the insurance stuff at all. I do a quick intake with people to make sure that if we do an estimate, it will bring them value. Our estimates range from $1,000 on the lowest to $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 for the most complicated builds. And if it's a commercial space that's much bigger, it might be a little bit more. But compared to $100,000, you can see why those prices are much better. and much more helpful for people. And then, but I don't even want to charge them $3,000 or $4,000 if we're not going to bring somehow $50,000, $60,000, $75,000 more insurance than the insurance company is willing to release right now.
Well,
and I think,
you know, having defended insurance companies before as a lawyer, and a really neat thing that Matt offers is just a different approach to education about this whole process. So it's informative. It's another way that people can be proactive in getting the maximum amount out of their policies so they don't end up years down the line, well, without a house, right? And in some bad faith lawsuit. And those take forever and they're expensive. And it's just, you know, it just adds more pain to an open wound. And so I think it's really incredible what you're doing, Matt, for people, just, you know, helping them have options. And yeah, I want to thank you so much because it's huge. I mean, you are helping to rebuild, and we've got like the whole West Coast on fire right now. So, you know, I think it's people beyond California too that are going to need that. Yeah.
And somebody says, we got our money. Now we know what we can do, what we can build or buy. Listen, you know, one of the things that really over the years being a financial advisor was frustrating to me is it's never over. I mean, even if somebody dies, now you've got a new set of deals with their kids. There's never a completion. And what's so neat about this is like, it's done. This client's done. And so for me, after 25 years of being a financial advisor, being able to like do a transaction and be done with it, that was kind of neat. And at the backside of it, having it, you know, be so satisfactory to the individual end user and them to be so happy with what happened and being able to just remove there's so many things. One thing I heard it a few times from people, fire victim. They really don't like to be called that. They love to be called a fire survivor. There's a lot of language around, and there's a lot of emotion. I'm sure when you guys bring in new clients, you spend a half an hour or more of the first meeting just trying to get to know who they are, what kind of language they speak, so you can help them understand what you're trying to do to help them. When you do this with fire survivors, it's the same story over and over and over. And so it's draining in that regard, but it's also just satisfying to get them help. Out of the last 2.5, 3 years of doing this, what we discovered this summer is we want to change the negotiation setting. So what tends to happen is people get this report from their insurance company. They know in their gut it's wrong. Their contractor's telling them it's wrong. Now they don't know what to do. And they might hear about us through word of mouth or through United Policyholders. But if they don't, they don't know where to turn. And they're on this back foot trying to disprove this estimate from the insurance company. And so what we would like to do this season and going forward, that's why it was a nice call with Mary the other day, and maybe you guys are going to have people that you know of that are going to lose homes through this, is get our estimate done first and send it to the insurance company and saying, this is our loss. We have done our due diligence. It's our proof of loss. That's what our policy tells us to do. And let them dispute it. They're going to try and dispute a contractor that's been doing this for 20 years, and they're not going to win that back. And so it's a change of the leverage. And so we're hoping to try and go that way this year, instead of waiting until the insurance companies put a claimant in the corner and saying, hey, tell us where we're wrong. We want to flip that and put the insurance company in the corner and say, hey, go get a contractor that's local to California that's licensed, and we'll do the accurate estimate the way these guys have, and then we'll talk. And so and Mary's liked this when we were talking on the phone the other day. This is a theory of mine right now because we haven't tried it yet. This whole business was a theory of mine. I wasn't sure if it was going to work. It's worked tremendously well. Insurance companies are not used to having an accurate report handed to them. They are used to either a public adjuster who's inflating it to bang up his commissions, or they're used to a contractor who thinks he better inflate this so he has enough money to build the home and have a profit. And so they're always getting these reports that they know are not accurate. And so it's this, you know, back and forth. And what we've done is we slid into the middle of that and said, hey, here's an accurate report. Chelsie, you said fiduciary earlier, or maybe Daren, you said it, but as a financial advisor, we had a fiduciary practice. We felt like that was the most honest way to approach things and the best way to do financial advice. And so we set this whole thing up as the same way. What's the best thing for our claimants? The best thing for our claimants is to get an accurate report so they don't ever get accused of insurance fraud, so that they can finalize their claim quickly and so that they can get on with their life. So all of the rest of the stuff is not necessary. The inflating of reports, the arguing with insurance companies. They don't argue very much after they get our estimates because they kind of know they can't, and they know their contract better than anybody. So from financial advisor standpoint, we used to spend, CFP tells you to go through everybody's homeowners insurance, right? And their auto insurance, make sure they're adequately insured. What I didn't realize doing that, Daren, over the years was that I didn't know how much it cost to rebuild a home. And in particular, I didn't know how much it costs to rebuild a home under a demand surge economy, where you've got a shortage of contractors and an influx of people that are demanding them. So prices go up significantly. And so for you, I was thinking, over your next couple of years is just giving reviews and looking at that and looking at in Sonoma, I don't know where the most of your clientele lives, but depending on the area, you can find a contractor that would tell you it'd probably be $300-400 a square foot or $500 a square foot. And looking at their insurance policies in that regard, from a real estate standpoint, I've been thinking about this for a long time. How many of your clients that you've sold homes for knew what their rebuild cost would be if they lost it in fire? Zero, right? Maybe one, maybe you've sold one to a contractor, but other than builders, nobody knows. And so their insurance companies are giving them dollar amounts for their coverage out of thin air. And they are saying this ought to be enough without considering anything in regards to what it might cost in a rebuild. And they do that through the same software that they lowball on these after fire estimates. So you all should look at your policies yourself and make sure you've got adequate coverage. But what we've started working with some real estate agents around here in Santa Rosa is, hey, just call us up. We do a $50 report that's a pre-disaster estimate of what we think it might cost to rebuild your home if there was a disaster. And for $50, you can handle this report and says, we think in a regular environment, it might cost $350 a square foot, but in a wildfire, lots of people lost their homes all at once, it might cost $500 a square foot. Take that to your insurance company, because what we also discovered out of all of this is it's 100% the individual insured's responsibility to set those numbers, even though the insurance company gives you those numbers.
So Matt, I'm running into something right now as I have some houses in escrow with buyers, and they were evacuated last week. Evacuations have been lifted, but we are unable to get homeowners insurance right now until the fires are 100% contained. So
yeah. How do you do it?
Would it be a good time now to reach out to you and ask you to do an analysis for them while we're waiting to get the actual insurance?
I mean, up to you. If I were a real estate seller, realtor or a real estate agent, I would want to be, how hard is it to separate yourself from all your competition? It's difficult. There's not a lot of other things you can value add. To me, if that person buys the home and they get it underinsured and they lose the home, and the neighbor next door, their real estate agent said, no, you're going to need $700,000 of coverage, not $600,000. Or at least the contractor we hire suggested that you should talk to your insurance company. Even if the insurance company insists they don't need that much money, but they were given this report that said they might, you've got a pretty good case to say that we tried to tell you we needed the adequate coverage and you swayed us the wrong way. So insurance companies aren't expecting this. Insurance agents are no longer agents. They are brokers. They do not have the right to give you advice on what it costs to rebuild your home. And so they, like an annuity seller selling an S&P 500.
Wait, let me just back up. So you're telling me that when I go to the insurance broker and say, how much should I insure my home for? That person can't legally tell me how much to insure my home for.
Correct. They can give you some side of guidance. And so what they've defaulted to is printing a report from a software company that's owned by the insurance industry. And the software report comes out with depending on your company, Nationwide isn't interested in this game. They feel like if they handle the insurance the way it should be handled, they'll get good word of mouth. Other companies, like I just renewed my insurance with AAA. And I told them I needed more coverage, and they sent me an estimate from the same software we use to do our estimates, but they didn't change the pricing. And the pricing comes out they think I can rebuild this home for $430,000. It's a $700,000 rebuild. And so we battled a little bit, until I told them what I do on a day-to-day basis. And then they stopped. So I saw this firsthand, but most people, they get a number from their insurance agent and they feel like, well, that's obviously they know, but they may know, but that's not in their best interest to have you fully insured, depending on the company. And so they don't have a right to give you advice, Daren. They're facilitating a transaction just like a Wall Street broker would, right? When you go back to a Wall Street firm that charged you a commission and you say, wow, that product, that investment wasn't right for me. It wasn't appropriate for me. Oh, well, you read the prospectus. I mean, I just facilitated the transaction.
Right.
And that's exactly what insurance companies do now. Well, you told us you wanted $600,000 of coverage, so we gave it to you. Nobody tells them that. Nobody knows. So I'm trying to get this part of it out too, pre-disaster, as an insurance agent or as a realtor or as a financial advisor, a lawyer, going through and look at, then generally speaking, a person's homes, if not their biggest assets, one of their biggest. And there's this sleeping giant out there. 75% of people that lost their homes in Santa Rosa were underinsured. So It's not as if it's sort of a one-off and it might be just an unlucky person. This is actually intended. And so
Matt, let me just interject for a minute. So if, let's say, for example, I've got a client, I could say, look, I want Matt to do a pre-analysis on rebuild of this property. That's something as an advisor I could offer to my client, right?
Yeah, and I think it's $50 or $75. They get on our website. They tell us a few things about their home. You could do it for them. It spits out a 5-page document that just sort of, says this isn't insurance advice and you need to talk to your professional. But what it gives them is a basis for the discussion with the insurance company. And if the insurance company still wants to refuse to bring the coverage to that amount, they've got a basis for a future action against them, or they can find a different company. I want to, so that we can talk a little bit more, but yeah, I think it'd be definitely part of your process, Daren. I mean, we had a few clients that I took through with Allstate. They were really being lowballed. He's a $750,000 a year endoscopist. And I said, well, you don't need the lowest cost coverage. You need to be covered. And they did. A year before the fire, they went and got more coverage. I mean, if I was still that guy's financial advisor, he would never leave. He still loves me. I covered $250 worth of loss that he would have eaten if he kept his policy with Allstate. So those are value adds that I felt like, this is neat. This is something I don't have to charge for. We can get this asset. You can help walk with, your older clientele in particular, but everybody, and just telling them, hey, let's make sure this month we're doing reviews. Let's make sure you're adequately, I just found out you might not be. And if you are, great. If not, we just close the loop in your estate plan that nobody's thinking of. And it's neat.
Yeah.
Chelsie, I think with your question, these insurance companies have automatic moratoriums on writing coverage as there are evacuations in the area. And it's the old phrase, right? You can't buy fire insurance when there's a fire running up the canyon. So unfortunately, you're probably going to be stuck in a situation where you're either going to have to wait and or seek the private insurance world out for a sort of a temporary solution. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of little private insurance companies across the country that sell to high-risk situations.
There's that state coverage one, I think, which is a lot of areas like in Lake County where they had the fire in 2015. I actually just had a buyer who wanted to purchase cash for this property that was in a very high fire zone. Fire had already gone through it. So my family had lived there and lost their homes in 2015. So I knew the likelihood of the insurance situation. And I called and I said, what's the homeowners insurance here? Can we get homeowners insurance? And they said, no, you can only get it through the state. And they were selling this property as an Airbnb. So the price was inflated, fully knowing that it wasn't going to comp anywhere near any other sales. So an appraisal wasn't going to happen. It wasn't going to come in at an appraised price. So my client came in and he said, well, I'll just buy it cash. It's fine. And I was like, no. We're not going to do that because you're not going to ever get an insurance policy that's going to come up to what you purchase it for. And you're going to only be able to get the state insurance. And then in this high fire zone, if this fire comes ripping through again, you're probably out $200,000 minimum because. Yeah.
And then that goes back to the math here, right? So right now it shocks people to learn in Santa Rosa, it would cost $1.2 million to build a home that you could buy for $1 million. So that's an inverse relationship. It's not normally like that. What you're talking about, though, is probably the opposite of that. That home's value was inflated because you could prove the income, right, from an Airbnb revenue source. So that's not going to factor into the rebuild stuff. So the cost to rebuild is the cost to rebuild, and that's where you want to be insured. And so the resale price is sort of a good starting point to give you a ballpark, but it's really not going to be based on, especially right now in California, it's not based on the cost that you paid to buy the home. It's going to really be based on what kind of labor supply there is and how much material prices have increased. Our state's fires have caused lumber and steel prices to increase in and of itself, but globally speaking, India, China, and other countries around Africa have joined this world of consumerism, and they are buying up these products as well, the raw materials that go into our homes. So since 2015, so the last 5 years, raw material prices have doubled. And so, where it used to take $7,000 to build a deck, it now takes 14. And if you plug that out all through the entire home, you can see why, these people up in Paradise had $300,000 of insurance, but their home's going to cost $450,000 to rebuild. It might have sold for $250,000. So it's hard. You have to really get into that individual home and look at, what's there, what kind of, features. If I tilt my screen back here, I don't know if you can see the curved top of the ceiling there as it meets the wall. Nobody does that anymore. That's what they did in the 20s and 30s. It would cost a lot of money to do today. So I wanted to make sure that was in my coverage. But so you really do have to, because of the state of this state, we really have to look at each individual property. And I think from a realtor standpoint, you could really add some value to clients and having them helpfully understand what they're buying as far as how much it needs to be insured for. And same with you, Daren, and same with you, Mary. I think anybody should know this information, and it's really kind of a shame that's not out there.
Well, and Matt, that's an interesting thing, right? Like helping people get adequate coverage right out of the gate. So, looking at that and then also looking from a claims perspective down the line, are there things that you think realtors can do, like have their clients save all the photos of the home so you can see the curvature? I mean, because maybe that curvature you showed us isn't really part of a general marketing photo, right? So, but there are things somebody like you
Brian
might
Buffini, if you really wanted to do something with this, I think it would add a lot of value as a package for your sale. That you could go as far as actually having us. I'm trying to talk with builders and have them, as they do their build of a new home, give us their numbers, do one of these estimates, and hand the estimate to the client. And on the occupying in the home, they've got this estimate that could tell any future insurance company what it's going to cost to rebuild, and you just adjust that for inflation over time. I don't know if you need to go that far when you're not building a home, but having a package that says, it's important to have this insured. It's probably one of your biggest assets. We went out and we hired this contractor to give us a ballpark estimate as to what they think it would cost today to rebuild this. Please take this to your insurance companies and your agents and tell them this is the type of coverage you need. And after that, yes, I mean, the people that have video of their homes, I'm telling people to video their homes. Video every room in your home, every drawer in your home, every closet, everything. Because when it comes time to substantiating these estimates, the more proof you've got, the more evidence you've got, the harder it is for the insurance company to fight. So, I mean, we've done some estimates off of literal napkins in a coffee shop as far as the floor plan, because they had nothing. And we've done estimates where we had all the architectural planning. It's a heck of a lot easier to do these estimates when you don't have to guess, when we have architectural plans. So if I was selling real estate, I would try and find the building plans. I would definitely give them all the pictures that were associated with the sale on the website and keep that on a nice file on the cloud somewhere, so that if this ever happened, you could say, well, here's the estimate we had. Here's all of the different things that was, we took when we were selling the house. And it just makes it a lot easier for people. I'm surprised how many people don't have pictures of their home. I'm surprised how many people never had any idea what their home was made out of. We have to really pull teeth with some people. What kind of flooring did you have? I don't know. You don't know? Did you have carpet? Well, I think so. Well, was there hardwood under that? Did you ever pull it up? Well, we never pulled it up. So, sometimes you just have to guess. And it's kind of shocking to me that was another realization I've had doing this over the last 3 years. Our financial industry gives millions and billions of dollars of loans every year to people to buy stuff that they have no idea what they're buying. It's an interesting phenomena. but it happens. So, I guess I'm just being Don Quixote here trying to set up, don't lose it. Don't lose 25% of that because you got caught on this insurance game.
Well, Matt, this has been super helpful. We just for the sake of users and watching this, we would like to keep it semi-short. I think we'd love to have you back with some updates, especially as we continue through this fire season.
Yeah, anytime.
And love to hear more. So we really appreciate the time today. Make sure you take time to like this. Let us know if you want to hear more about this topic. We think it's pretty important, especially in Sonoma County. And again, Matt, thanks for taking the time to join us today.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions, you three or anybody that's listening, just I'm sure you'll have our information on the posts. bwbuilder.com is our website. But otherwise, we're here for questions. I love to talk, as you can tell. So I'll stop now.
Thank you so much, Matt. We appreciate it.
Thanks for inviting me. All right, guys. Take care.